That night, the screams coming from the hut outside the village shook the entire village. A widow and a deserted forest. But that night, she was not alone. Who were those sages who lit lamps in the forest every full moon night? If you liked the story, don't forget to give it a like. So the story begins in a small village called Madhuvan, near the Rajasthan border, where a widow named Saira lived alone. After her husband's death, society looked at her with disdain, and she was forced to live in an old hut built outside the village. So they met anyone nor took part in any fairs or festivals. But among the villagers, it was rumoured that Saira's nights were filled with mystery. Many claimed they heard laughter, and sometimes screams coming from her hut. Just behind the place where Saira's hut was located, there was a dense and ancient forest. This forest was known as Kaala Devra, and it was said that years ago, there was a sage's hermitage there. The village elders said that on every full moon night, lamps were lit in that forest, and soft sounds of devotional chants were heard. But no one ever figured out who lit those lamps, because there were neither any sages, nor any monastery there. It had only been a month since Saira had started living in the hut, when the first full moon arrived. Around midnight, a faint light appeared from behind the hut. Saira peeked through the window. A procession was moving, sages wrapped in white clothes, holding lamps and chanting mantras. Saira got scared. She knew there was no one to warn her, but her curiosity pulled her feet forward. She took her shawl and slowly walked toward the forest. As soon as she entered the forest, she felt like she had entered another world. The trees were glowing. Lotus petals were scattered on the ground, and in the middle was a large stone on which 8 sages were chanting mantras. One of the sages looked at her and said, "You have come. We were waiting for you." Saira stood stunned. She said, "Me?" The sage replied, "Yes. The soul of this forest will be liberated only through you." The sages told her that this place used to be Tapasviaranya 100 years ago. Here, the great sage Muni Vedant used to perform penance. But one night, when a demonic spirit entered the forest, Muni Vedant and his 7 disciples sat in a sacrificial ritual to stop her. The demoness was destroyed, but along with her, Muni Vedant and his disciples were also cursed. Their souls would not attain salvation until a helpless woman who suffered injustice participated in their ritual. Saira was that woman. Saira was told that she would have to participate in the ritual on the next full moon at that same place. However, during the ritual, the demonic spirit would reappear to test her. If Saira got scared, ran away, or doubted, the spirit would be freed again, and the entire area would become a realm of death. Despite the fear, Saira agreed. On the full moon night, Saira reached the spot where the sages had met her before. All 8 sages started chanting beads. The fire pit was lit, and Saira was seated right in the center. After midnight, a cold wind blew. A black shadow emerged from the fire, the demonic spirit. Her eyes were burning, her hair flying in the wind, and she said, "You too want to stop me? You too want to bind me?" Saira trembled but said, "I want to free you, but through the path of peace and love." The demoness screamed loudly. The flames of the fire rose to the sky. Saira's shawl caught fire, but she closed her eyes and continued sitting peacefully with the sages' chants. As soon as the mantra was completed, the sages' voices echoed, "Oh, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti!" Suddenly, a bright light spread, and the demonic spirit turned into light and flew toward the sky. Along with her, the sages' forms also slowly dissolved into the light. Saira fainted and collapsed. When Saira regained consciousness, the sun had risen. There was a strange peace all around. The forest no longer felt scary. Instead, it felt full of life. On her way back to the village, for the first time, people bowed to Saira. From that day, the Kaala Devra forest came to be known as Sadhu Siddhvan. A tradition of lighting lamps on every full moon night began there, and Saira became the first flame of that tradition. After Saira's return, a stir arose in the village. People felt that something had changed. Not only was the air in the forest peaceful, but Saira's face also began to shine with a divine glow. The village women, who once considered her impure, now began lighting lamps near her hut. Children started calling her Mai, but not everyone liked this change. The village landlord Thakur Raghavir, who already looked down upon Saira, became irritated by her rising respect. "A widow is becoming the village goddess?" he shouted angrily and sent his servant. "Find out who these sages were, and whether they really died, or if some trick is going on." The servant Dhiru went into the forest but didn't return for 2 days. On the 3rd day, Dhiru returned to the village, but his condition was strange. His eyes were red, his face pale, and he kept repeating the same thing. "They didn't go. They are still here. They are awake." The village healer said, "It's a mental shock." But Sarah understood some invisible force was still active. Sarah had a dream one night. She was standing in front of another cave in the forest, and there was a writing there. The one who was given life must now awaken death. At dawn, she walked alone toward that part of the forest where no one had ever gone. And then, she found that very cave. Inside was a large stone door, inscribed with strange symbols. Sarah touched the door, and it opened. When she entered the cave, there was darkness, and in dim light she saw 7 faces embedded in stone. They were the same sages, but their faces weren't peaceful. Then a voice said, "What you saw was only a shadow. Our curse is only half lifted. Complete liberation is still pending." Sarah was told that one sage Vedant soul was still trapped, the one who, at the time of the final ritual, was not ready for self-sacrifice. He was still wandering the forest, and now his form had become Kalsadhu. On the next full moon, black smoke rose from Sarah's hut. People saw a black-masked sage floating in the air, heading toward the hut. Sarah now knew this was Kalsadhu, the incomplete form of Sage Vedant. So it began chanting mantras. Villagers started running here and there. A flame rose above the hut, and Sarah lost consciousness. Now she had entered the inner core of the sage. Inside herself, Sarah saw a cave-like place, where a male sage sat silently. It was Sage Vedant. "Why did you call me?" he asked in anger. Sarah replied, "Because you left the path unfinished. You did not renounce your ego." Tears rolled down Sage Vedant's eyes. "I was scared. I was afraid of death." Sarah extended her hand. "Your salvation is not mine, but your forgiveness." Sarah seated Sage Vedant with her in the fire altar, and now this ritual was happening within the soul. In the village, people saw a massive light in the sky, as if the gods had descended. On the burnt wall of the hut, a shloka appeared shining. Only those attain liberation who conquer through renunciation. So the foundation was unconscious, but her face was filled with a smile. Sarah is now known as Vandevi. Her hut became a pilgrimage site called Saira Kunj. Every full moon, sages, monks and devotees began coming from afar. The village's name was changed from Madhuvan to Sidvan. Thakur Raghavir left the village out of fear. Sarah had now grown old, but her eyes still had the same glow. One day, a little orphan girl came to Sarah. Sarah lifted her in her arms. "From now on, your name will be Chandrika. You will be the next protector of this forest." Sarah began to teach Chandrika the same wisdom she had received from the sages. Sarah died on a full moon night. People saw her body emit a light that went straight to the forest, where it had all begun. Sarah was no longer just a name. She had become a tradition, and every full moon night, a lamp still lights there on its own. No one touches it, but it burns, because Sarah is still there. If you liked this mysterious and heart-touching story, then be sure to like, comment what part of Sarah's journey inspired you the most, share this story with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more such amazing stories. Thank you. We'll meet again with the next mystery.